You have been reading silence, like a language you were never formally taught, trying to find meaning in the pauses, in the distance, in the moments where someone who clearly feels something finds every available exit from expressing it. Holding the small things, the glance that lingered slightly longer than it needed to, the text that came unprompted at an unexpected hour, the one moment where the walls came down briefly and something real passed between you before the shutters closed again, holding all of it up to the light, trying to determine whether what you are sensing is actual or invented, whether you are perceiving something genuine or constructing a story from fragments, because the alternative, that there is nothing there, is too costly to accept. Here is what nobody says clearly enough. You are probably not inventing it. The avoidant does not perform warmth, does not manufacture the moments of genuine contact that you keep returning to as evidence. The system that suppresses feeling is the same system that would suppress the performance of feeling. It does not distinguish. What leaks through the containment is real, precisely because the containment is working against it. The feeling that surfaces despite the architecture built to prevent surfacing is the most honest signal available. What you need is not more fragments to interpret. What you need is the specific, legible, unmistakable map of what authentic love looks like when it is moving through an avoidant system, what it produces in behaviour, what it creates in the quality of their presence, how it differs, specifically and identifiably, from the ordinary management of a relationship they are not genuinely invested in. This is that map, the first signal. And it arrives so quietly that most people miss it entirely. They remember the specific things, not the general outline of who you are, not the broad strokes that anyone paying moderate attention would retain. The specific, small, seemingly inconsequential details that you mentioned once, in passing, without any indication that you expected them to be filed away. The offhand comment about something that matters to you. The name of a person in your life you referenced briefly. The particular thing that happened years before you met them that shaped something about how you move through the world. Weeks later, months later, in a context that has nothing obvious to do with the original conversation, they reference it. Directly, indirectly, in a way that makes it clear it went somewhere, that it was received and retained and is now part of the internal map they have been quietly building of who you actually are. This matters disproportionately with avoidance because their attention is, by design, rationed. The system that manages emotional input does not generously receive and store information about people it is not genuinely attached to. The investment of genuine, specific, retained attention is not something the avoidance system distributes carelessly. It is not the output of someone maintaining a relationship for reasons of convenience or habit. It is the output of someone who, against the design of their own interior, finds you worth knowing completely. The second signal is in the quality of their disagreement. When an avoidant genuinely loves someone, they fight with them differently than they fight with people they are simply managing a relationship with. The disagreement has texture, has investment, has the particular quality of someone who cares enough about the outcome to stay in the difficulty, rather than use their considerable skill at emotional exit to remove themselves from the discomfort of conflict. People who are not genuinely attached withdraw from conflict in a specific way, a smooth, practiced withdrawal that is almost indistinguishable from agreeableness, but is actually closer to indifference. They concede not because they have been persuaded, but because they have not been sufficiently invested to sustain the friction. The relationship is not worth the energy of genuine disagreement, so the surface tension is released and the distance is maintained, and nothing real was ever at stake. When the avoidant genuinely loves you, they do not do this. They stay, they push back. The friction has the specific heat of someone who needs you to understand something, who cares, with an urgency they probably cannot fully articulate, about being known accurately by you, rather than simply leaving you with whatever impression is most convenient. Who would rather sustain the discomfort of real disagreement than achieve the false peace of a concession that leaves something important unresolved between you? The avoidant who argues with you from a place of genuine investment is showing you something they cannot yet say directly. The argument is an intimacy. The willingness to stay in the difficulty with you is the declaration the words have not yet found their way to. Third, watch what happens to their humour when they are with you. Humour in an avoidant is a particularly sensitive indicator because it is one of the few channels through which genuine warmth can move without triggering the full containment response. The emotional suppression system manages direct expressions of feeling. It manages physical demonstrations of closeness. It manages the vulnerable, clearly stakes-present moments of intimacy. It is less effective against laughter, against the specific, unguarded quality of genuine amusement that arrives before the management can intercept it, against the humour that is personal, that references something only you would understand, that builds on the private language that genuine intimacy creates, that treats you as the specific person you are rather than the general presence of another human being. When the avoidant is in authentic love, the humour shifts. It becomes more specific, more unguarded, carries a different quality of ease than the wit they deploy in ordinary social interaction, which is often a form of connection management, engaging enough to be present but controlled enough to stay defended. The humour that surfaces with the person they genuinely love has something warmer in it, something that could not have existed before they knew you specifically, something that treats your particularness as a gift rather than a complication. That humour is not small. It is one of the least defended windows into the actual interior, and what it shows when it appears in this form is real. Here is a signal that is almost never discussed because it requires knowing what to look for. They show up when it costs them something, not in the moments when showing up is easy or natural or the obviously correct social response. In the moments when it requires the overriding of the system, when their default, the retreat, the management, the creation of comfortable distance would be entirely available and would cost them nothing, and they choose, against that pull, to be present anyway. The avoidant who cancels plans effortlessly, who allows silences to extend indefinitely, who is reliably absent in the moments that require emotional availability. That avoidant, when they are genuinely in love, does something different in the moments that matter most. Not always, not without the friction of the system working against the choice, but with enough consistency to be distinguishable from the pattern. They call when they knew you were struggling with something. They stay in a conversation that is becoming emotionally demanding, rather than finding the exit they could have taken. They offer something, time, presence, a quality of attention, in a moment where the system was pushing hard in the opposite direction, and they pushed back against the push. This is not nothing. For someone whose architecture is built around the conservation of emotional energy, the expenditure of it in your direction, especially when expenditure is difficult, when the system is actively resisting, is one of the most significant demonstrations of genuine attachment available. The cost is the measure of the love. The fifth signal lives in what they do with physical space. The avoidant who is not genuinely invested maintains physical space with a consistency that rarely wavers. The management of proximity is part of the broader management of intimacy, the body positioned at a distance that feels safe, the touch that is brief or absent, or offered on their terms, in ways that maintain control of the emotional temperature. When authentic love is present, something shifts in the management of physical space. The body makes choices the system did not fully authorize, moving into proximity when proximity was not required, staying close when distance was available. The unconscious physics of genuine attachment expressing itself through the specific geometry of where they put themselves in relation to you. It is also in the quality of touch when it occurs. Touch that comes from authentic love with an avoidant has a different texture than touch as social management. It lingers slightly. It arrives at unexpected moments. It is not rationed with the usual precision, but escapes, the same way other genuine feeling escapes, through the gaps in the containment. The hand that reaches without the motion being decided, the closeness that establishes itself before the system has registered and begun its management. The body, in other words, tells the truth that the words are not yet organised enough to deliver. Pay attention to how they handle the moments when you need something. not the ordinary low-stakes moments, the moments of genuine need. When something is difficult and the emotional requirement of the situation is real and visible and cannot be met with deflection or practical problem solving or the comfortable redirection towards shallower territory. The avoidant who is not deeply invested in you will manage these moments efficiently and at arm's length. They will do the minimum that the social contract requires, acknowledge, briefly, the difficulty you are in, offer something functional, and move the dynamic back toward more manageable ground as quickly as possible. The encounter with your genuine need will activate the system, and the system will produce its standard response. The avoidant who loves you authentically will still struggle in these moments. The system still activates. The discomfort of being in the presence of genuine emotional need is still real and still produces the pull toward distance. But something else also runs. Something that overrides, partially and imperfectly, and with visible effort sometimes, the pull toward exit. The staying is not seamless. It might be clumsy. The words might miss the mark. The presence might be slightly stiff with the effort of maintaining it against the system's preference. But it is there. They are there. In a moment when everything in their architecture was pushing toward the door, something in them chose the room. That choosing, imperfect, visible in its effort, clearly costing them something, is one of the most honest expressions of genuine love an avoidant can produce. Honour it for what it is, rather than comparing it to a standard it was not built to meet. There is a signal that lives in silence specifically, because silence, with an avoidant, is not monolithic. It has different qualities that communicate very different things. There is the silence of withdrawal, the managed, defended quiet that creates distance. That is the audible form of the system running its containment program, that communicates without words, with devastating effectiveness. That something has activated the defences and the interior is currently closed. And there is a different silence entirely, the silence of someone who is comfortable, who is present without needing to fill the space, who can exist alongside you without the silence being a statement about anything, without it being loaded with the weight of distance or the message of unavailability. Just quiet, easy. The particular ease of two people whose nervous systems are, in this moment, at rest together. This second silence is one of the most significant indicators of genuine attachment in an avoidant, because the system that is in defense mode cannot produce it. The defended state is not quiet, it is managed, and management has a quality of effortfulness that the genuine ease of authentic attachment does not. The relaxed silence is the signal that the containment has lowered, that the presence of you, in this moment, is not producing activation, but its opposite. That whatever the avoidant nervous system experiences as safety, you are providing it without trying to. That safety, felt by a system that has rarely felt it with another person present, is the foundation beneath every other expression of love on this list. They talk about the future, casually, without ceremony, without the future being presented as a significant declaration. This signal is subtle and easily missed, but worth looking for carefully. The avoidant system, when it is managing a relationship at a safe emotional distance, keeps the future vague. Future talk implies continuation. Continuation implies genuine investment. Genuine investment implies the kind of attachment that the system is organised to prevent from becoming too real, too weighted, too much of a structural fact about the person's life. When authentic love is present, the future leaks in. Not as a grand declaration. The avoidant is not generally in the business of grand declaration, which is itself a form of vulnerability the system discourages. But in the small, unannounced references, the thing they mention wanting to show you someday, the offhand assumption embedded in something otherwise ordinary that you will be present for something months away. The casual inclusion of you in a picture of their life that extends beyond the current moment. These small future references are not small. They are the system failing to contain the assumption of your continued relevance. The attachment leaking into the timeline in the form of a simple, undefended, taken for granted, you will be there. That taken for grantedness, the specific casualness of it, the absence of performance, is actually the most honest version of the declaration the system cannot produce directly. The last signal, the deepest one, the one that, when you recognize it, changes the texture of everything else on this list. They are different with you, not performing different, actually different, in ways that the people who know them well, who have known them across other relationships, across years of the pattern replicating itself, would notice and comment on. A quality of presence that is not their default. An openness that surfaces, partially and imperfectly, in the specific context of you. A willingness to stay in emotional territory that they routinely exit in every other relational context. The defended system that produces the same managed, rationed, carefully controlled intimacy with everyone it encounters is, with this specific person, producing something else. Not consistently, not without the familiar cycling back toward defense, but often enough and genuinely enough to be distinguishable from the pattern. They laugh differently, are quiet differently, argue differently, are present in a way that carries a different quality than their ordinary presence, are, in the most literal sense, more themselves, more of the interior accessible, more of the genuine feeling allowed to surface, more of the person beneath the architecture visible in the specific light of what you create between you. This is what authentic love produces in an avoidant, not the transformation the anxious heart hopes for, not the sudden and complete dismantling of the walls, but the specific, unmistakable, deeply real difference between who they are everywhere else and who they become, incrementally and imperfectly, and sometimes at great cost to the system running its defense, in the presence of you. That difference is not nothing. That difference is everything. And if you are seeing it, if you recognize what has just been described in the texture of what exists between you, then what you suspected was not invented. It was never invented. It was always there, moving through the only architecture available to it, toward you.